Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. As part of our continued preseason previews, we're turning our attention to good old Teja in San Antonio. And we're joined by our colleague Jared Weiss, which you might know him from his years covering the Boston Celtics. Now he's moved on to Texas to take on the Spurs, what I find to be the burgeoning gem of the Western Conference. Jared, what's up? Welcome back to the show.
It's good to be here. I'm a Texas boy now.
Got to get a little bit of an accent going. Very strong pivot in accents, by the way. But let's get right into it. Every team obviously makes some moves in the offseason. The Spurs, they made some big ones, of course. They doubled down on De'Aaron Fox, gave him that 4-year, $229 million max extension. They drafted Dylan Harper at number 2, Carter Bryant at number 14. Got to see them during Summer League. They were a lot of fun to watch. They traded for Kelly Olynyk. They added some shooting outside, as well as getting Luke Cornett for 4 years. So a lot of size coming in this summer. When you think about the overall trajectory of this team, what would you say is the single most impactful change that reshaped the outlook of the Spurs this summer?
I mean, they didn't do anything that was a holistic change besides getting Dylan Harper, but I don't think that's going to affect them that much this season, especially because, as we reported last month, he tore his thumb during offseason workouts. So he's hoping to be ready for opening night. But even if he is able to play opening night, I think, one, he's not going to rush it back. He was pretty clear with the doctors when he had the injury. If I need to have surgery, let's have surgery now. I'm not trying to do this whole, I'm a rookie, I need to earn my keep, so I want to play through this thing. He's like, I got to get right. I got a long career ahead of me. I'm the number 2 overall pick. I don't really have to worry about getting opportunity in this league, so I got to do what's right for me. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make it to opening night, but I know that's what he's working towards. But regardless, the point is that he's not going to be, I assume, a starter right away. He's probably going to slowly integrate himself into the rotation. We saw him at Summer League. Summer League was kind of a mess for him. He was very up and down. We know he's a great player, and I'm sure by the end of his rookie year, he's going to be really good. But between De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle, and then obviously they have Devin Vassell, who's kind of like a 2-3 in their system, they've already got plenty of backcourt reinforcements. So I think the big thing for them is just obviously getting Wemby back. He missed the second half, or at least after the All-Star break, because he had that DVT, that blood clot. His offseason's been great. He's been killing it in his workouts. I've gotten to watch some of his workouts, and the guy looks like he's going to take another step forward this year. We usually see with these MVP caliber players that year 2 is when they kind of start to seem like they kind of know what they're doing out there. And then year 3, we start to kind of see what their game really is going to look like. And then year 4 is when they step into that all-star frame. Obviously, he's already an all-star just because, Wemby's not even good yet. He's pretty mediocre as far as his skill set is concerned.
I know, he's so young, too.
He's so big and he's so incredibly talented and smart that even as a mediocre version of Wemby, he's already a top 10 player in the NBA. So the real paradigm shift for them this year is Wemby going to be able to really find himself offensively? And are they going to be able to kind of use him in a Jokic-esque way, which he's probably capable of doing? He's not nearly that level of passer and shooter yet, but he can be utilized in kind of a similar way to Jokic, where he can be that pivot point hub anywhere on the floor. And if they can start to really build that offense out like that, I know they only won, 34 games last year, and teams adding on 10 more wins seems ridiculous, but that's not he was out for a while. Fox missed a lot of time at the end as well. They barely got to play together. This team could jump into the high 40s very easily. It's very plausible for them to do that.
So you actually touched on a lot of things I want to get into, but it seems like you're saying that Victor Wembanyama has that. No, I love it. This is great. This is kind of foreshadowing everything I want to talk about, because you're talking about Victor Wembanyama. We know he's the centerpiece of this team. He's anchoring the defense. He gave him that rim protection, but also he's their point forward in some cases, right? And he's also the hub of the offense, moving around, making sure people are moving around him. So he has the opportunity to have the biggest step forward possibly from what you're saying. But looking at, Stephon Castle, rookie of the year last year. And then you just mentioned Devin Vassell in the depth of the backcourt. There's a possibility that he could take a step forward or maybe take a step back with all of the pieces that they have. So outside of Victor Wembanyama, who is clearly going to be the main pillar here for the growth of San Antonio, who do you think has the biggest opportunity to take a step forward for this team? I'm also thinking, let's not discount what De'Aaron Fox could do in terms of taking a step forward, being able to be healthy, because apparently there's some finger issues out in San Antonio between De'Aaron Fox's pinky and Dylan Harper's thumb. It's just like a whole thing going on. But who do you think has the opportunity to take a big step forward, and who may have to take a step back in order to allow for that to happen?
Yeah, I don't know how many people I'm going to do like a righty standard handshake with on media day. There might be a few of those kind of like weird, awkward left-handed daps or something like that.
There you go.
I mean, the guy with the most obvious pathway to a big step forward is Castle, because he demonstrated he's going to be a core starter. I mean, honestly, you could see him being a six-man down the road just because this game is like such a perfect six-man game. It's such like a Manu Ginobili-esque kind of fit there. But I think at the very least, he's a starter right now. He's a lock to be a starter, I'd say, right now. And, you know, Fox and Wemby are so obvious, right? So Castle's the guy. He had a really strong rookie season. The team's going to be so much better this year. Like, they're going to be a lot better just between Mitch Johnson having the offseason to really put his stamp on it. Very clear hierarchy where Pop is no longer going to be kind of coaching while he's out and Mitch is taking over. So this team is going to have much more structure to it. And I think that just gives Castle more room as really the third option, I guess you would say, to really take that step forward. The person with the most on the line, I think, is Devin Vassell. Because Devin Vassell, he's been in the league for a little while now. I mean, he is, how old is he now? He is 25 right now. So he's not on a rookie deal anymore. He's got to kind of prove that he can be consistent throughout the year and be a real two-way force for them. And there's not a lot of pressure on him offensively. Like, the offense is kind of going to come and flow for him, especially because they're going to be a team that tries to play a lot more transition and a lot more random. So he's not going to be just kind of plugged into the corner. He's going to be able to move a lot, which is what makes him really good. Yeah. And they're not going to rely on him to be an isolation player or a pick and roll player very much. So he's going to be able to be a lot more efficient. And that's the big thing that they've been looking for him for years is, can you stay healthy and can you be efficient? If he can do that, he's going to be like a good two-way wing for them. And that's going to really take them to the next level because they don't have a lot of shooting in their starting lineup.
Yeah, that's last year they put up a lot of threes. They were pretty average in terms of their 3-point percentage, right around like 35%. There was a lot of youth, a lot of promise out of the youth, but it didn't convert into actual domination. I mean, they were in bottom third in both offense and defense. They were in the bottom third, I believe, for pace as well. Like, they haven't been able to convert that athleticism and the youth that they have on this team. So I'm thinking, as we look towards this season coming up, Victor Wembanyama coming back, being able to play with De'Aaron Fox, who came to San Antonio for that opportunity to have that tandem with him. You're talking about, a Stephen Castle coming off the bench potentially, or a starter having that explosive downhill game. I'm hearing the opportunity for scoring, lots of ball movement, lots of different weapons to be able to execute that. But I'm also hearing a little bit more potentially consistency on defense. So I want to talk about how these stars can directly impact those two things. Offense, defense, obviously. We're talking basketball, y'all. Let's keep it real simple. From a defense perspective, we know what Victor Wembanyama can do. But from an offense perspective, what do you think he can do to kind of unlock the pieces around him and help get this offense back in the top half of this league, especially in a very packed Western Conference?
You got a few different ways. Because he has De'Aaron Fox, there's going to be a lot of times where Wemby is standing by himself because Fox is so fast. Their goal is you play up tempo, you get into very quick high pick and rolls with Fox and Wemby. Defense is not aligned properly. Fox collapses the defense, and you got Wemby standing in space by himself. And I think the big difference, this year will be he probably won't just launch for three. He's going to be making more reads. He's not going to just take the open three just because it's there. Because frankly, he's not a good enough shooter to always take that. And if Wemby's going to evolve, he's got to look at, can I take a solid three look, or can I really, really turn this into something else? And especially, can I get into the paint and draw a foul? Because if Wemby's drawing 10 free throws a game, like, it's a wrap. It's a wrap at that point. He's getting to the MVP conversation. They're taking a step to the top half of the West. Like, that's really in line for them in the next year or two. But I really want to see, what does Wemby do with space when he can create it? And then what does Wemby do with his back to the basket? Because, going back to Jokic, who I think is the pathway for him in so many ways offensively, Jokic, what makes him so good is he can put his back to the basket and still read the floor as if he's dribbling the ball facing up. And then if he can't really do much with it, and if he can't do much with it, he just turns around and throws it at the rim. And we know Wemby can do that. Like Wemby, one of his escape clauses that nobody else can do, he's like Kareem in that he could just throw it up from anywhere on the floor. And that means that he's got to play with his back to the basket, and he's got to manipulate the help defenders and get like kind of quick pinging passes going around. And I think he could start to do that this year more effectively. Last year, when he had his back to the basket, we saw him try to get to some of those like KG and Akeem Olajuwon moves. Of course, he was in the gym with Akeem. And, we've seen that. I feel like every summer there's a different center in the gym with Akeem. And we see that photo. We're like, great. Now the league is screwed. So I'm really curious to see what he got out of that.
Exactly. Get scared.
But with Wemby, this is one of the big things that we're talking about with his body and his skill set finding rhythm is, can you play with patience and control while being able to be physically dominant? And that's what we love about Jokic. Jokic is like one of the most patient players we've ever seen. He can put himself in like the tightest situations and just push his way through it. And then if he can't get anything, he closes his eyes and he throws the ball as high as he can, and it lands right in the middle of the net without touching the rim because he's just superhuman. And that's the thing with Wemby is like, can Wemby start doing stuff like that? Because Wemby's big advantage is, even though he's not as strong, his reach and his step and his balance on his steps allows him to cover so much ground in the way that Giannis can do. And he doesn't have the touch limitations that Giannis has, so he doesn't have to bulldoze through everybody. So that's the big thing is like, can Wemby find his touch and his creativity and his patience? And I think we're going to see at least a pretty good step forward with that. And that's how you see him ending up. You might average like 28 and 6 assists this year. Like it could be pretty impressive right away.
Ooh, it was kind of crazy to think that Wemby was taking more shots from the perimeter on average than he was taking shots within the restricted area in the paint throughout the season. And I think you're right. It felt as if those were the main options he had, especially when it came down to the late shot clock situation. There were more opportunities for him to find shots outside, heaves really outside, rather than being able to take his opponent one-on-one into the basket. And that is where he gets, you talk about superhuman. I mean, the ground he can cover in that small amount of time is surreal. Let's shift it over to Fox, right? This is the person that came over from Sacramento, opportunity to start anew. Of course, gets there, doesn't get to play with Wemby, but he's someone that could also, and undoubtedly is going to shift the trajectory of this team and raise the ceiling of the Spurs because of his downhill ability and his capability of unlocking players because of just how much attention he draws going downhill. Let's talk a little bit about what De'Aaron Fox should be looking to do this season in terms of unlocking his teammates, but also let's talk about defense too, the point of attack, because I think this is something that despite all the youth, despite all the athleticism, people would be shocked to see how, the Spurs really struggled to contain that first layer of defense last year.
Yeah, they need some good point of attack defenders on the ball. You can't just have this whole Wemby's behind us so we can just feed to him and he handles everything. And let me rephrase. You can't do that. It's just that there's a ceiling on that. And also, they also have to think about pacing Wemby. Like, he can't, you can't wear this guy out by March. And I don't know, maybe they can, because maybe getting out of the first round or even the play-in might be a dream at this point. But you got to pace this guy throughout the season. He's going to have a ton of demand on him. And with his body, I don't care if he takes care of his body in a way that very few players have. It's still a giant body, and he's still got to manage that load. And so I think that Fox, I'm really curious to see, is Fox going to get back to being a high level defender, which is something that he really did early in his career. He took on so much offensive responsibility in Sacramento. They just didn't really have good defensive chemistry over the years. And I'm really curious to see if that's something that really comes back into the fold with him, because if he's a good point of attack defender and they're able to do some steering on those high pick and rolls, if they're able to just be astute in picking up cross matches in transition, and it doesn't have to be just Wemby picks everything up and then everybody tries to reset, it's going to pay dividends for them so much, especially if they can get out and transition more, because that's what they want, and that's what every team wants. And we're seeing so many teams these days, they're getting more random and chaotic. They're trying to do what the Pacers did, or the Cleveland or Atlanta. All these teams, especially in the East last year, they were basically like, we got guards here. Our team is a bunch of guards that run around in circles. So let's just have everybody collapsing space, cutting in random directions, being super unpredictable, and let's just try to get out and run as much as we can. And the Spurs are built that way. The Spurs aren't a wing-led team. They're a team of a bunch of really creative downhill guards that don't shoot the ball at a high level. And then whatever the hell Wemby is, I don't even know how to describe him. Just like a unicorn's unicorn. So
right.
they... because they're not a well-experienced and structured team, they need to be able to be disciplined on defense so that they can get out and run. And we saw what that did for Houston last year. Houston was I think they got way ahead of themselves last year with how well they played because their defense was just so reliable. And they just didn't have the offensive ability last year. Now they got KD. So I think even with Fred VanVleet being out, they're going to have that balance. And Wemby kind of has to do offensively, I think, a bit of what KD's going to do for Houston, where it's just like a guy they can just give it to. He can work out of the high post. He can give them stability. And so that means guys like Fox and Castle and Vassell, they've got to be consistent on defense because then it just makes it easier for them on offense.
Well, one of the things about Houston is that they really solidified themselves as a defensive-oriented team. And we know that San Antonio used to have that identity. And right now, I feel like they're teetering. They're trying to still figure that out. And that's okay because they've got all these youth pieces that are going to grow into that. But if you were to put money on it, looking at the way that this team is constructed and the people that they have, what's the identity that they can get closest to in this one season? Offensive or defensive identity?
I think offensive at this point, just because they're going to have to be a higher pressure defense, I think, because of just the way their talent is built and because of how they want to open up offensive advantages. It just makes sense for them to be a higher pressure defense, which is going to have some risk. And if you got Wemby back there, it's like, why not take more risks up at the point of attack, knowing he can clean things up so well? He can guard two guys in the paint easily. He recovers in a way that nobody else really can. So you kind of want to be more of an offensive identity, especially with a team that they have so many guys that can play in open space so well. And, we haven't even talked about like Keldon Johnson is a good example. Jeremy Sohan, mm-hmm. Like they have all these other kind of bigger guys that can play pretty well downhill as well. They have so much depth and they have so much kind of pliability in how they build their lineups. They don't really have a lineup that's like very clearly the right one. I don't even know what their starting lineup's going to be. I assume Fox and Castle are starting. Harrison Barnes, I'd imagine, is a lock to start. They need that veteran leadership. Skill set wise, he fits perfectly. We're talking about defense. We need a guy that can play defense and can shoot and make good decisions. I would imagine Wemby's going to start. Then do you stick with Sohan in the starting lineup? Do you get Vassell, who's a shooter out there? Do you start Luke Cornett and you go double big to alleviate some of this on Wemby and take some of the responsibility off of Wemby defensively? There's a lot of different ways they can go. I feel like they're going to start Vassell and they're going to get that extra shooting out there. They're going to get someone they know that can at least just like, all else fails, just like run some shooting actions for him at the very least and give themselves that offensive variety.
Okay, Mitch Johnson, if you're hearing this, offensive capability is right there for you, right there for the taking. I don't know how Pop feels about it, but yes. Let's switch over because you just mentioned all the depth, right? You listed some names that I wanted to get to in terms of Keldon Johnson and Jeremy Sohan, and also in the front court, Luke Cornett, Kelly Olynyk. There's a lot of extra names floating around this team. And it might be that some other team in the organization, the association, might be able to capitalize on, I guess, a small amount of riches, an embarrassment of riches. I don't know if it's an embarrassment. It might be a little bit of a shaming of riches, but not an embarrassment just yet. A blushing. Oh, I like that. A blushing of riches out in San Antonio. If you're looking across this roster, is there any player or players you think that another team could capitalize on and, make that player the subject of an in-season trade?
I mean, there has to be, because I just listed their depth. I didn't even mention Harper, who we talked about before. Julian Champagnie.
Carter Bryant, too.
Yeah, Carter
Julian
Bryant.
Champagnie as well.
Champagnie's a good player. Like, he's started a lot for them. He's a good shooter. He's kind of like, I wouldn't say poor. He's kind of like Harrison Barnes in some ways, in that he's like a really good plug and play 6'7" guy who can kind of do everything for them. So they have enough depth that they can move guys out from the middle of their depth chart and slide up other guys. Like Carter Bryant, I really like Carter Bryant. I don't think he's going to be ready for that early in the season, but a 6'8" guy that's like a really, really smart defender. And I actually just sat down with him a few days ago, and it was a really fascinating conversation. So there'll be a cool piece on what makes him such a uniquely trained defender coming soon on The Athletic. Had to get a plug in somewhere, but
there you go.
I think it's going to depend on how the season goes early on. Like, one, Wemby missed time because of a blood clot last year. They got to get comfortable with Wemby. Like, they got to, I assume they're going to be checking on him pretty frequently, being like, how's this blood clot situation looking? How's this blood pressure? I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how this stuff works, but like, they're going to be monitoring that. They're going to be load managing him a bunch. So they're going to see how can this team perform with that process going on. And if they think that they're close enough, they can take us a big step forward. I mean, you look at it, they got Kelton Johnson, they got Devin Vassell. Those guys are making a good amount of money. You can bring in a more veteran player and send those guys out. And those guys are the 20, I think they're both 25, right? So they're relatively young. They're good building blocks there. I don't see them trading Castle or Harper this early on. I'd imagine at some point there's going to be one of those three guards is going to get moved at some point down the road, but they're not moving Fox. That's not going to happen for a while. I don't think they even can with the extension, and just like they obviously need to build around him for a while. And I think he's a great fit for this team in pretty much every regard. So, I could see them moving one of those guys that's kind of like entering into veteran status at this point. Sohan is like a really talented player. It's just really hard to figure out like how do you utilize him best, but they're going to. They're going to. They're going to figure that out. So I could see this team making a move at the deadline if they're really primed to make a serious playoff push. But if they are where we'd expect them to be, where they're kind of floating in the play-in area, it doesn't make sense for them to do that. It only makes sense if they're like, we could actually give Houston, Denver, OKC, Minnesota, I guess, the Clippers, if Kawhi Leonard's still in the NBA at that point, like a run for their money. But look at that list. Like, there's a lot of teams in the West that they'd have to leapfrog. These guys got to be patient. Like, they got the golden ticket. They got Wemby.
Yeah,
they got a number 2 overall pick in Harper. They hit a home run with Castle last year. Like, they've got time and patience. Wemby's going to have a very long career. He's probably going to be one of the best players in the NBA, if not obviously the best player in the NBA. They got to be patient.
No, that's real. I'm also looking at like Jordan McLaughlin's on this team. I'm just thinking like there's also smaller package deals that can happen with some of these smaller names as well and these smaller contracts on this team. Okay. Thinking about next year is just going to be crazy. I feel like the NBA, people are back from injuries. People are going to be back into the mix, especially in the West. And we know what Victor Wembanyama can bring. We just talked about that. We just talked about what Fox can bring. We just talked about they can lean into offense as their way to separate themselves from their competition. But I got to ask you, what's going to be the biggest swing factor? I think everyone looks at the X factor not necessarily as the biggest star. We know Wembanyama, when he's healthy, he's good. And again, we know what Fox can bring. But what's going to be the biggest swing factor that's going to go, ooh, if this happens, their 3-point percentage goes up? Or Jeremy Sohan figures out exactly what he's supposed to do out on the floor for the Spurs. What's going to be their biggest swing factor to get them into the top half of the league, but particularly to get them into the playoffs?
It's that defensive identity that you were talking about earlier. We know that they have a ton of offensive talent, and they're going to be spending the season working on figuring out how that can mesh together, how they can build coordination. So, that they're going to figure that out. We know they have that talent. This is a question of who is going to step up and be like a truly elite defender? Who's going to be the guy on this team that's like, I'm going to be the best defender on the floor every single night to bring that point of attack, to help give Wemby a break behind me. Harrison Barnes is like the guy that we all know and trust, but he's a little bit older. Like, they need a 33. Younger guy to kind of step up and do that. And I mean, they have a lot of candidates for it. I just don't know which one it's going to be. I've always really liked Vassell. And, Vassell's admitted like he's been inconsistent. Obviously, health has been a big factor of that. I really want to see him put it together this year. Like, he's so talented. He's a good two-way guy. They're paying him like $27 million this year. Like, he needs, just from a cap perspective, they need him to be reliable and consistent for them. And he's capable of doing it. So I think if he really has a big year, if he finally stays healthy and puts it all together every single night, which I think is doable because there's just not a ton of pressure on him to do it, that's going to give them that reliable athletic wing that they can count on every single night to play next to Barnes. And that's going to give them that kind of completeness in their starting lineup. And, if they just don't have holes in their rotation, that's what's going to elevate them to being a mid-40s or even high 40s team.
Okay, we got to close this out. We're going to land the plane on this one. They want to get to the playoffs, obviously. They want to be not in the play-in. They want to be in the playoffs. But I think that's just like the hope we have for a team that has a Wemby on it, right? And before you said a unicorn, I mean, Wemby literally laid it out for us. He's an alien, right? If you have an alien, what are you going to do with this alien? What is the most realistic outcome with a healthy alien flanked by Fox, flanked by Vassell and Castle and Harper at some point, and all the different elements of this team? What's the most realistic outcome for this Spurs team, Jared?
45 wins, 7 seed, and I think they would make it out of the play-in for sure. And then they get in the first round, and they take 2 games off of, let's say, Houston, and then the door gets shut in their face. But that'd be nice. I can drive that series. I would enjoy that. I don't see them getting out of the first round at this point. There's just because there's too much competition.
Right.
I think if you put them in the East, they probably would be making a conference finals run potentially. Like they would be really good. It's just the balance of power in the league right now is just too heavy for them. And especially with Dallas, if Kyrie's coming back for the postseason, if things really work out there, they're going to be pretty loaded ahead of the postseason. So there's just too many teams out there that could really just be impactful and really bother them. And like, obviously the Lakers, they don't really match up great against the Lakers. So that's one where it's like, even if they have a better regular season, potentially they probably would lose in that series, I'd imagine. Although now they say that they have Wemby. So it's like, does any team really have a matchup advantage against them? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know.
I don't think so. No,
this is what makes the Spurs cool. Why I'm excited to be around them. Like, we have no idea.
Exactly.
We have no idea.
No one has the handle, I love the word you used before, the pliability. I think that, quite literally, Victor is one of the most flexible humans, period, in the league. But just the pliability of how you can utilize him out on the floor. I don't know that anyone has that, especially, and then on top of that, the fact that he's like a 2-car garage in terms of like the space that he has out on the floor. It's just, it's unmatched. Great stuff, Jared. Thank you for breaking that down. Are you officially moved to San Antonio now?
Yeah, I've just got in. I got my place. I'm enjoying the heat. It's a different lifestyle than living in Boston, but I'm actually liking it so far.
Okay. Well, guys, that's Jared Weiss. Got a piece coming out very soon on The Athletic with Carter Bryant. I'm very excited about that. I love Carter Bryant as a prospect. I liked watching him this summer, and he's got a really cool story. So guys, definitely check out that piece on The Athletic. This has been your Spurs preseason preview on the NBA Daily, and we'll be back to drop another team preview as we step in towards the NBA season. Keep it locked. Thanks, guys.